The piercing wail of the intrusion alarm tore through Captain Jake Morrison's morning coffee, scalding hot liquid splashing across his uniform. On board the Terra Alliance Outpost, Echo, red lights pulsed relentlessly, painting the metallic corridors in an urgent, crimson glow. His comms unit buzzed frantically, a chorus of voices demanding his attention. "Captain, you need to see this now." Lieutenant Lyra Vance's voice crackled, a blend of excitement and raw fear. Something massive just appeared at the edge of the Solaris system. Jake sprinted to the main control room, his boots clanging a rhythmic, anxious beat on the reinforced metal decking. Outpost Echo, a vigilant sentinel orbiting the moon, had for 2 decades monitored for any threats to Earth. For years, they'd seen nothing but the vast, empty expanse of space and the occasional wandering asteroid. Today, everything had changed. The primary view screen, typically displaying a tranquil starscape, now showed 12 expanding pinpricks of emerald green light. Each dot rapidly resolved into a gargantuan vessel, dwarfing any human construction, each one bigger than anything humanity had ever conceived. The largest, the Revelation, class command ship, was the size of a small city, with strange, sweeping curves and towers that shimmered with that unsettling emerald light. How did they get so close without detection? Jake demanded, his voice tight. "They just appeared, sir." Sergeant Rax Kaelen, the radar specialist, responded, his face pale. 1 second, nothing. The next, these ships were just there, as if plucked from thin air. Dr. Anya Sharma, the outpost's lead astrophysicist, hurried into the control room, her lab coat still askew. Her eyes widened, captivated by the alien vessels dominating the screen. "This is it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "First contact. We're actually meeting aliens." Jake felt a familiar knot of dread and exhilaration tighten in his stomach. Every person on Earth had wondered if this day would come. Now, it was here, and he had to make the initial decisions that could shape the destiny of all humanity. "Send an immediate Priority 1 message to Terra Alliance High Command," Jake ordered, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "Tell them we have visitors. Big ones." The alien ships moved slowly, deliberately, towards Earth, seemingly in no hurry. They appeared to be waiting, observing. Jake scrutinized them, desperately trying to discern their intentions. Were they benevolent? Were they planning an assault? The sheer scale of the vessels rendered Earth's current armaments utterly inconsequential, akin to throwing pebbles at a fortress. General Kaelen Volkov arrived on Outpost Echo within 6 hours, having taken a high-speed shuttle from Earth. He was a tall, imposing figure with a rugged, age-lined face and sharp, analytical eyes. Behind him stepped Helen Thorne, humanity's most skilled diplomat. She was fluent in a dozen languages and had dedicated her entire career to resolving complex international disputes. "What's our intelligence?" General Volkov asked the moment he entered the control room. 12 ships, unknown technology, no communication attempts as of yet. Jake reported, gesturing to the main screen. "They're just sitting there, approximately where Mars would be if it were on this side of the sun." "They're waiting for us to make the first move," Helen observed, her gaze fixed on the emerald green hulks. "That's actually a good sign. If they intended aggression, they likely would have acted already." Dr. Anya Sharma, meticulously studying the ships with every available instrument, chimed in. "The energy readings are incredible. These vessels are powered by something we don't fully comprehend. And look at their size. They could transport millions of people or millions of soldiers." General Volkov added the last part quietly, his expression grim. Just then, all screens in the control room flickered. A new image materialized, a face that was almost human, yet distinctly alien. The being had smooth, indigo-colored skin, large, dark eyes like cosmic voids, and a small, almost imperceptible mouth. When it spoke, the words resonated in perfect, unaccented English. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Zaktar of the Galactic Union. We come in peace and friendship." Jake felt everyone in the room collectively hold their breath. The alien's voice was calm and pleasant, like a benevolent teacher addressing students. "We have traveled far to reach your world," Zaktar continued. "We bring an offer that will forever change your species. We offer you protection." Helen Thorne stepped forward, her posture regal despite knowing the alien could not physically see her. "This is Helen Thorne, speaking for the people of Earth. We are honored by your visit. What kind of protection do you offer?" Zaktar's large eyes seemed to bore directly into her, even through the vastness of space and the projection. "The galaxy is a dangerous place, Helen Thorne. There are threats that young species like yours cannot imagine. Ancient evils that consume entire worlds, entities that feed on civilizations. We, the Galactic Union, safeguard younger species from these horrors." "That sounds truly remarkable," Helen responded carefully. "But we need to understand more. What would this protection require from us?" "Very little," Zaktar replied. "You would join our protected species program. We would establish defensive outposts around your world. We would share some of our technology to aid your growth. In return, you would follow our guidance on matters of galactic importance." Jake noted that the alien hadn't truly answered Helen's core question. He also noticed General Volkov's deepening frown, indicating a troubling thought. Dr. Anya Sharma leaned forward. "Ambassador Zaktar, how many species are in your protected species program?" "Hundreds," the Xylosian stated proudly. "We have brought peace and safety to civilizations across the galaxy. Your world would be vastly safer under our care." "What exactly are these threats you protect against?" Helen pressed, a question Jake had also been pondering. For the first time, Zaktar seemed momentarily uncomfortable. His large eyes flickered away from the screen for a fraction of a second. "There are ancient powers in the galaxy, beings that should not exist, rogue species that refuse to accept peaceful coexistence. They bring only destruction wherever they go. But what are they specifically?" Helen Thorne pressed, her voice calm but insistent. "If we are to accept protection, we need to know precisely what we are being protected from. The details are difficult for young species to fully comprehend," Zaktar replied, his voice still pleasant, yet Jake could discern a subtle shift, perhaps a hint of annoyance. "Trust in our experience. We have kept the galaxy safe for thousands of years." General Volkov interjected, his voice firm. "Ambassador, you mentioned these threats destroy entire worlds. How do they accomplish that? What kind of weapons do they employ?" "Their methods are varied," Zaktar responded. "Some utilize terrible armaments. Others corrupt species from within. Still others simply consume everything they touch." Jake glanced at Helen, recognizing the same thought mirroring in her eyes. The alien was being incredibly vague about these supposed threats. Every time they pushed for specifics, Zaktar offered non-answers. "How long would this protection last?" Helen asked, trying a different angle. "As long as needed," Zaktar said. "Some species require protection for only a few hundred of your years. Others need our guidance for much longer. We will remain as long as your people require us." Dr. Anya Sharma, who had been meticulously taking notes, looked up at Jake and mouthed the words, "Red flags." Jake nodded subtly. Something about this generous offer felt deeply unsettling, despite its superficial allure. "We appreciate your exceedingly generous offer," Helen said, her tone diplomatic. "However, humanity will require time to discuss this among ourselves. This is a monumental decision that affects our entire planet." "Of course," Zaktar said, his pleasant expression returning. "You have 7 of your days to decide. We will wait at the edge of your system, but do not tarry. The galaxy is becoming more perilous, and unprotected species do not survive long." The alien's face vanished from the screen, leaving the control room in a tense silence. Jake surveyed his team. A shared, unspoken understanding hung heavy in the air. This offer sounded too good to be true. "What do you think?" Jake asked Helen. "I believe we need to ask many more questions," she replied, starting with the most crucial one. Helen looked at the screen where the emerald-glowing alien ships patiently waited in the cold vastness of space. If they're so effective at protecting people, and if these threats are truly so terrible, why won't they tell us precisely what we're being protected from? Jake nodded. That was precisely the question that gnawed at him. In his experience, genuinely helpful individuals were eager to explain everything. Those with hidden agendas were the ones who guarded secrets. Outside the station, the 12 Xylosian vessels waited patiently in the frigid vacuum of space. They had made their offer, and now they expected humanity to accept it with gratitude. What they didn't know was that humans had a peculiar habit of asking uncomfortable questions. And the most uncomfortable question of all was the simplest. Protection from what? 3 days had passed since the Xylosians made their astonishing offer. Colonel Jaxom Steele stood in the shuttle bay, meticulously checking his equipment one last time. He was about to embark on a mission that could either secure humanity's future or condemn them to an unimaginable fate. Today, he would visit the colossal alien ships, aiming to uncover more about the mysterious threats they so vaguely referenced. Remember, we're strictly there to gather information. General Volkov's voice echoed over Jax's radio, his tone stern. Don't agree to anything, don't sign anything, and don't trust anything they tell you without irrefutable proof. Jax nodded to his two companions. Dr. Lyra Xiao, a brilliant linguist and expert in nonverbal communication, could decipher the subtlest nuances in any interaction. Beside her, Analyst Kaijin Sato, a sharp military mind, possessed an uncanny ability to dissect complex situations and discern underlying realities. "Are you certain about this, Colonel?" Lyra asked as they climbed into the small, sleek shuttle. "We have no idea what we're walking into." "That's precisely why we must go," Jax replied, his gaze fixed on the docking port. "Humanity needs to know the true nature of what we're dealing with." The shuttle arced through the Solarius system, heading directly for the colossal Revelation class command ship. As they drew closer, Jax could truly grasp its immense scale. The vessel was a literal floating city, with spiraling towers and intricate bridges connecting various sections. Ethereal emerald lights pulsed and flowed across its surface in patterns that almost resembled an alien script. "Look at that," Kai whispered, pointing. Smaller, more agile ships, like darting insects, swarmed around the massive command ship. "Those look like patrol craft or advanced fighters. They're definitely ready for a fight if they need to be." A voice, resonating in perfect English, spoke through their comms. "Earth Shuttle, you're clear to dock at Landing Bay 7. Please follow the guidance lights." The landing bay was gargantuan, easily capacious enough to hold 50 Earth shuttles. As their craft settled, Jax noticed other ships docked nearby, vastly different from the Xylosian vessels outside. These ships were smaller, appeared older, and clearly belonged to entirely distinct species. "Those aren't Union ships," Lyra observed, her brow furrowed. "Look at the designs. Too disparate." 3 Xylosians awaited them at the shuttle ramp. One was Ambassador Zaktar, his indigo skin shimmering. The other 2 were from entirely different species. One, a towering drachner with rough reddish-brown scales and piercing amber eyes, walked on 2 powerful legs. The other was a slender, pale Athelian with emerald green skin and 4 gracefully articulated arms. "Welcome aboard the Harmony of Stars," Zaktar greeted them, his small mouth curving into a smile that didn't quite reach his large, dark eyes. "I am pleased you accepted our invitation." "Thank you for having us," Jax responded politely. "We are deeply interested in learning more about the Galactic Union and the protection you offer." "Excellent. Cool me. I will show you a records hall. You can see for yourselves how we have aided so many species across the galaxy." They traversed vast corridors that seemed to stretch into infinity. The walls displayed holographic moving images of various planets and alien species. Some scenes depicted tranquil, prosperous worlds, while others showed stark destruction and chaos. "These are worlds we have saved," Zaktar explained as they walked. "Without our protection, they would have been annihilated by the terrors lurking in deep space." The records hall itself was monumental, filled with countless floating screens showcasing data on hundreds of different worlds. Each screen presented intricate pictures, numerical data, and detailed charts, narrating the story of a unique species. Please look around, Zaktar invited. Witness how the Protected Species program has brought unparalleled peace to the galaxy. Jax, Lyra, and Kai split up, each examining different sections. Initially, everything appeared profoundly impressive. The records purported to show species granted advanced technology, shielded from disasters, and helped to build superior civilizations. But as Lyra, the linguist, delved deeper into the language patterns within the records, she began to notice unsettling anomalies. "Jax, come look at this," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the low hum of the holographic displays. She stood before a screen detailing a species called the Forlag. The records stated they had been under Union protection for 8 centuries. "Look at the population numbers," Lyra said quietly, her finger tracing a declining graph. 800 years ago, they had 2 billion people. Now, they have 500 million. Where did the rest go? Jax studied the chart. It says here they were relocated to safer worlds for their own protection. But it doesn't specify which worlds, Kai added, joining them, his analytical gaze scrutinizing the data. "And look at this economic data. These people used to build their own ships and develop their own technology. Now they produce nothing but food and raw materials." He gestured to another record, this one about a species called the Coelom. The same disturbing pattern emerged. High population before protection, drastically lower after. Advanced technology before, basic farming after. "This is starting to look like," Lyra began, her voice barely a whisper. "Like slavery," Jax finished quietly, the horrifying realization dawning on them. Zaktar materialized beside them suddenly, making all 3 humans jump. His large, dark eyes scanned the screens. "I see you are studying our success stories," he said, his smile unwavering. "The Forlag were once a violent species, perpetually engaged in conflict. Now they live in tranquility. What happened to their cities?" Kai asked, pointing at the records. "They used to have thousands. Now they only have farming villages. Cities breed violence and competition," Zaktar replied smoothly, his tone perfectly neutral. "We help them find a simpler, more peaceful way of life." "And their population?" Lyra pressed, her voice tight. "Smaller populations are easier to protect," the Xylosian said. "We relocated many of them to safer worlds, away from the dangers of their home planet." "Can we visit these other worlds?" Jax asked, his gaze fixed on Zaktar. For just a fleeting moment, Zaktar's pleasant expression flickered, a subtle tightening around his minuscule mouth. "That would not be feasible. The journey would take too long, and those worlds are situated in dangerous areas of space." They continued scrutinizing the records. Every single species displayed the same disturbing pattern. Prior to protection, they had been diverse, creative, and expanding. After protection, they became simplistic, dependent, and dwindling. "Ambassador," Jax said carefully, choosing his words precisely. "We keep seeing references to these terrible threats you protect against. Can you show us records of these enemies?" "Of course," Zaktar said, leading them to another section of the hall. "These are the rogues, the destroyers, the species that refuse to accept peaceful coexistence." The screens here displayed various species labeled as galactic threats and enemies of peace. Jax studied the information intently. These rogue species consistently exhibited strong militaries, advanced technology, and growing populations. "This species here," Kai said, pointing at one screen, the Xandarian Freedom Confederacy. "It states they're a major threat to galactic peace. But their crime list simply says they refused to join the Protected Species program and attacked Union ships that entered their space. They are violent expansionists," Zaktar said firmly, his voice losing some of its former pleasantness. "They attack peaceful Union vessels without provocation." "But according to this," Lyra countered, reading from another screen, "Union ships were in their territory first. It appears they were merely defending themselves." "You do not comprehend," Zaktar said, his voice now distinctly less friendly. "These species spread falsehoods about the Union. They claim we are conquerors, not protectors. They poison the minds of young species against us. Jax felt a cold dread trickle down his spine. What exactly do you mean by poison their minds? They tell stories, Zaktar said, his large, dark eyes growing even deeper, seemingly bottomless. They say that protection is slavery. They claim that we strip resources from protected worlds. They spread fear about our intentions. Are these stories true? Lyra asked quietly, her gaze unflinching. The Xylosian stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. Truth is a matter of perspective, Dr. Xiao. What matters are results. The galaxy is more peaceful now than it has been in thousands of years. Protected species live in safety and harmony. The rogues live in constant fear and conflict. Because you're hunting them, Kai stated, not a question, but an accusation. We defend ourselves against their aggression, Zaktar replied. When they attack Union ships, we respond appropriately. Jax realized they had learned everything they needed to know. The Galactic Union wasn't protecting younger species from terrible threats. They were the terrible threat. They conquered worlds by offering protection, then slowly stripped away everything that made those species independent. We should return to our shuttle, Jax said, his voice firm. We have much to report to our leaders. Of course, Zaktar said, his pleasant expression eerily returning. I hope you have seen enough to understand the benefits of our protection. The galaxy is becoming more dangerous every day. Species that attempt to stand alone do not survive long. As they walked back through the interminable corridors of the harmony of stars, Jaxom noticed something he had missed before. The alien individuals they passed, members of various protected species, looked uniformly tired, their shoulders slumped, their eyes devoid of spirit. These were not proud members of a grand Galactic Union. They were prisoners who had learned to smile at their captors. Back in their shuttle, as they sped away from the colossal alien vessel, Lyra Xiao turned to Jax. We have to tell them. Tell them what? Kai Sato asked, his expression grim. The truth, Jax replied, his voice steely. The Galactic Union isn't offering protection from external threats. They're the threat. They're enslavers who use fear and insidious control to dominate entire civilizations. But what about these rogue species they kept talking about? Que questioned. Those are the free ones, Lyra said, her voice filled with a new understanding. The species that said no and truly meant it. The Union calls them threats because they prove that species can survive without their protection. Jax looked back at the massive Xylosian fleet waiting patiently at the edge of the Solaria system. We need to get this intelligence to Terra Alliance High Command immediately. Humanity needs to know what we're really being offered. Think they'll believe us? Kai asked, a hint of doubt in his voice. They have to, Jax said, his resolve hardening. Because if they don't, Earth is going to become just another protected species. And protected species don't stay free for long. The shuttle hurtled through space towards Earth, carrying the most critical intelligence report in human history. Behind them, the Galactic Union fleet waited patiently for humanity's answer. But now, the humans understood. The real question wasn't whether to accept protection. It was how to fight for freedom. President Kate Sullivan sat at the head of the long, polished table in the emergency meeting room, deep beneath Washington. Around her were the most influential leaders from every nation on Earth, their faces etched with a mixture of apprehension and grim determination. The room was hushed, save for the rustle of papers and the heavy, stressed breathing of those assembled. Colonel Jaxom Steele had just concluded his chilling report on what he observed aboard the alien ship. The truth was far more insidious than anyone had imagined. The Galactic Union wasn't offering aid. They were offering slavery, delivered with a smile. Let me ensure I understand this correctly, Prime Minister Chenlu from the Pan-Asian Federation stated, his voice a low rumble. These aliens want to protect us from threats they refuse to name, and every species they've protected has ultimately become enslaved. That's precisely correct, Jax replied, his gaze sweeping across the faces. The pattern is consistently the same. First, they offer protection. Then, they systematically strip away everything that makes a species independent. After a few hundred years, those species become utterly reliant on the Union, incapable of surviving without them. President Sullivan's eyes scanned the reports spread across the table. Population figures, technological development graphs, economic data. All of it narrated the same grim story. Protected species invariably became weak and dependent. What about these rogue species they mentioned? Asked President Martinez from the Latin American bloc. Those are the species that unequivocally said no to protection, Dr. Lyra Xiao answered, her voice clear. The Union hunts them down and systematically destroys them whenever feasible. They call it self-defense, but it's fundamentally punishment for refusing to submit. So our choices are slavery or death. President Okafor from the African Unity Alliance stated, her voice grim and resolute. Perhaps not. General Volkov interjected, rising to address the room. He activated a large tactical display, showcasing technical schematics and battle plans. We've been analyzing the Union's ships and technology. They possess significant weaknesses. Everyone in the room turned their attention riveted on him. Their technology is incredibly advanced, yes, but it's also remarkably old, he explained. They've been utilizing the same designs for millennia. They haven't been forced to innovate because they haven't faced genuine, adaptive opposition. Captain Jake Morrison stepped forward, his posture reflecting his newfound understanding of the alien vessels he had observed for days. Their ships are powerful, but they're also predictable. Every vessel adheres to the same patterns, employs the same tactics. It's as if they're strictly following a rigid, unchanging rulebook. What does that imply for us? President Sullivan asked, her gaze unwavering. It means they might not know how to handle an enemy that doesn't conform to their rules, Jake replied, a hint of steel in his voice. Silas Vance, the chief engineer from the Mars shipyards, who had been listening intently, finally spoke up. We've been studying the technology from their shuttle. The intriguing aspect is that it's not fundamentally dissimilar from our own technology. It's simply far more refined, more advanced. How much more advanced? President Chenlu inquired. Perhaps 50 to 100 years ahead of us, Silas estimated. That sounds like a considerable gap, but it's not insurmountable, especially if we can continue reverse engineering their technology. Dr. Anya Sharma, poring over her notes, looked up. There's something else we need to consider. The Union has held power for thousands of years. They're accustomed to species that either submit immediately or are swiftly crushed. They've never had to fight a prolonged war against a truly determined, adaptable enemy. You're talking about war, President Martinez stated, his voice low. War against an enemy that has conquered hundreds of worlds. We're talking about survival, General Volkov countered. If we accept their protection, humanity dies slowly. If we refuse, we might die quickly, but at least we'll die free. President Sullivan rose and walked to the panoramic window. Outside, she could see millions of people going about their daily lives, oblivious that their entire future was being decided in this very room. How much time do we have? She asked, her voice quiet. The Xylosians gave us 7 days, Jack Steele responded. That was 4 days ago. We have 3 days left. And our military situation? General Volkov pulled up more charts on the screen. Honestly, it's not favorable. Earth's entire space fleet consists of perhaps 50 vessels, most of them exploration craft or cargo haulers. We have some armaments, but nothing designed for a true interstellar war. However, Silas Vance interjected, we possess advantages they don't anticipate. Our manufacturing capability is enormous. If we can reverse engineer their technology quickly enough, we might be able to construct ships that can genuinely compete with theirs. How quickly? President Sullivan pressed. If we mobilize every shipyard on Earth and Mars, and if we can acquire more samples of their technology, perhaps 6 months to build a formidable fleet. We don't have 6 months, Jake pointed out, his voice grim. We have 3 days. Dr. Anya Sharma looked up from her notes, her eyes gleaming with a new idea. What if we don't need 6 months? What if we can survive long enough with what we do have? Everyone looked at her, captivated. The Union is accustomed to dealing with species that either submit immediately or are crushed swiftly, she continued. They've never had to fight a protracted war against a determined, adaptive enemy. What if we can make the cost of conquering Earth higher than they are willing to pay? You're talking about guerrilla warfare, General Volkov mused, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Hit-and-run tactics, making every victory excruciatingly expensive for them. Precisely, Dr. Anya Sharma affirmed, her voice gaining conviction. Make them bleed for every inch of space they attempt to seize. Make conquering Earth so prohibitively costly that other species begin to question if the Union is truly as invincible as they claim. President Sullivan returned to her seat, her gaze sweeping across the faces of the world leaders. Let's assume we decide to fight. What would that look like? General Volkov activated another screen, displaying Earth's current defensive positions. We have rudimentary defense stations around Earth and Mars. We have missile bases on the moon. We possess some fighter squadrons. It's not much, but it's a start. Our biggest advantage is that they completely underestimate us, Jake Morrison added. They believe we're just another primitive species that will fold at the first sign of serious resistance. Silas Vance nodded. And if we can capture more of their technology during the fighting, we can use it to build better weapons. Humans are remarkably adept at taking someone else's technology and rapidly improving upon it. What about the other species? President Martinez asked. The ones currently under Union protection. Would any of them assist us? Jaxom Steele shook his head. Most of them are too dependent on the Union to risk open rebellion. But if we can prove that the Union can be beaten, some of them might find their courage again. And the rogue species? President Okafor inquired. That's far more promising, Lyra Xiao said. If we can establish contact with them, they might be willing to help. They have every reason to desire the Union weakened. President Sullivan looked around the table, meeting the gaze of every world leader. I need to know where everyone stands. Are we seriously contemplating telling the most powerful force in the galaxy to go to hell? One by one, the leaders spoke. Prime Minister Chen was the first. The Pan-Asian Federation will stand with humanity, whatever the cost. President Martinez nodded. The Latin American bloc agrees. Freedom is worth fighting for. President Okafor smiled grimly. Africa has fought for independence before. We can do it again. Every leader in the room, without exception, concurred. They would rather fight and face potential annihilation than surrender without a struggle. Then it's decided, President Sullivan stated, her voice ringing with resolve. We tell the Galactic Union no. We reject their protection and prepare for war. What about our people? Prime Minister Chen asked. They need to know what's coming. We tell them the truth, President Sullivan replied, her gaze firm. Humanity has always been at its best when facing impossible odds. This is our moment to prove that freedom is worth any price. General Volkov was already issuing orders. We need to evacuate non-essential personnel from our space stations. We need to mobilize every shipyard and weapons factory. We need to prepare for the fight of our lives. Jake looked at the screen, where the emerald glowing alien ships waited patiently at the edge of the Solaria system. They're expecting us to accept their offer gratefully. They have no idea what's coming. What is coming? President Martinez asked. Jake smiled, a fierce, confident grin spreading across his face for the first time since the Xylosian's arrival. They're about to learn why humans have survived every challenge we've ever faced. We don't give up. We don't surrender. And we definitely don't accept slavery, no matter how politely it's offered. Silas Vance was already sketching ship designs and weapon systems. We'll need to move fast. Once we reject their offer, they'll likely attack within hours. Let them come, President Sullivan said, her voice filled with an unwavering resolve. Humanity didn't climb to the top of the food chain on Earth by accepting protection from stronger predators. We got here by fighting for everything we have. The meeting disbanded, every individual knowing the monumental task ahead. In 3 days, they would send a message to the Galactic Union that would reverberate across the galaxy forever. They would inform the most powerful empire in space that humanity was not interested in their protection. And then they would prove that sometimes the smallest dog in the fight can have the biggest bite. The message was stark, simple, and direct. President Kate Sullivan stood before an array of cameras, her address destined to be broadcast not just across the Solarius system, but to every corner of the vast galaxy. Behind her, the flags of every nation on Earth hung in a display of unprecedented unity. Ambassador Zaktar and the Galactic Union. She began, her voice steady and resonant with unwavering resolve. Humanity thanks you for your offer of protection. However, after careful consideration, we must unequivocally decline. Earth will remain independent and free. We wish you safe travels. Back to your own worlds. The transmission ended, and President Sullivan stepped away from the cameras, her face set. Within minutes, every human ship, station, and settlement had received the same message. Humanity had chosen freedom over enforced safety. The Galactic Union's response arrived barely 2 hours later. Ambassador Zaktar appeared on screens across the Solarius system, but his previously pleasant, almost serene expression was utterly gone. His large, dark eyes were cold, filled with chilling fury. "People of Earth," he stated, his voice no longer friendly but laced with thinly veiled contempt. "You have made a grave mistake. You do not comprehend the profound dangers that exist in this galaxy. Since you refuse our protection, you will learn about these dangers firsthand. We cannot allow a rogue species to threaten galactic peace." As if on cue, the emerald-glowing Xylosian ships, which had been patiently waiting, began to move, their colossal forms now accelerating towards Earth. Commander Scott Davis stood on the bridge of the Earth Ship Guardian, one of humanity's mere 12 dedicated military vessels. Around them, hastily converted cargo ships and civilian transports formed humanity's improvised defense fleet. Against the massive, elegant Union ships, they looked like children's toys. "All ships, this is Commander Davis," he spoke into his comms. "Remember the plan. We're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to make them pay for every inch they take." Captain Jake Morrison watched from the Terra Alliance Outpost, echo as the alien armada approached. His station had been transformed into a bristling weapons platform, armed with every missile and energy weapon Earth could fabricate in 3 frantic days. "Jake, we're detecting 36 ships now," Lieutenant Lyra Vance reported, her voice tight with tension. "They must have called in reinforcements." "Doesn't matter," Jake replied, his jaw set. "We knew they'd bring everything they had. The question is whether they're ready for what we're bringing." The first Xylosian vessel to enter weapon range was an Adjudicator, class Guardian, sleek and powerful. It fired a single, blinding energy beam, intended to disable the Guardian and demonstrate the hopelessness of humanity's position. But Commander Davis was ready. "Evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "Pattern 7. The Guardian twisted and spun in ways no Union ship had ever moved. Human pilots, trained extensively in atmospheric flight, dodging through storms and navigating treacherous mountain ranges, knew how to maneuver in 3 dimensions with an unpredictability that the Union's rigid, textbook patterns simply couldn't match. The energy beam missed entirely. "Return fire," Davis commanded. "Target their weapons systems." The Guardian's missiles, though not as technologically advanced as Union armaments, were fast and surprisingly intelligent. More importantly, they were utterly unexpected. The Union ship attempted to intercept them with defensive fire, but the missiles changed course at the last second, employing randomized trajectories that no computer could predict. 3 missiles slammed into the Adjudicator destroyer, crippling its primary weapons and sending it spiraling out of control. "First blood to humanity," Davis announced over the comms, a raw, triumphant shout. "Let's show them what we're made of." The battle erupted across the Solarius system. Human ships employed every unorthodox tactic they could conceive. They hid behind asteroids, utilized the gravitational pull of planets for sudden course changes, and launched attacks from unexpected vectors that the Union ships were simply not designed to defend against. But the Union possessed overwhelming numbers and superior technology. For every Union vessel damaged, 2 human ships were destroyed. The desperate defense was buying time, but it was costing lives. On Mars, Chief Engineer Silas Vance worked frantically in the shipyards. His teams had been dissecting captured Union technology for days, racing against time to understand its intricate workings. Now they were furiously fabricating new weapons based on their rapid insights. "The power source is the key," he told his assistant, Sarah Kim, as they toiled on a prototype of a Feo Hui Non Luong energy drain cannon. Union ships rely on massive amounts of energy for their shields and weapons. If we can overload their power systems, their shields will collapse. "How do we achieve that?" Sarah asked, wiping sweat from her brow. "We force them to expend more power than they anticipate," Silas replied, a grin spreading across his grimy face. "We hit them with such a barrage of missiles simultaneously that their defensive systems can't handle the sheer load." Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Lena Petrova, the encryption specialist, was making a different kind of critical discovery. She had been tirelessly studying the Union's communication signals, striving to understand their coordinated attack patterns. "I found something fascinating," she told General Volkov over a secure line. "Their battle computers are incredibly sophisticated, but they all adhere to the same fundamental programming. Every Union ship responds to threats in precisely the same predictable manner." "What does that imply for us?" the general asked, his voice sharp with urgency. "It means that if we can deduce their response patterns, we can predict their next moves," Lena replied, her excitement palpable. "And if we can predict their moves, we can stay one step ahead of them." This vital intelligence was immediately disseminated to every human pilot in the fleet. Within hours, Earth's fighters were exploiting the Union's very predictability against them. When a Union ship fired at a particular target, human pilots knew exactly where it would aim next. Fighter pilot Alex Reed was the first to truly capitalize on this weakness. Flying a converted racing ship armed with salvaged Xylosian weapons, he danced around a Union cruiser like a persistent bee around a bear. "Come on, you big ugly thing," he muttered, dodging another searing energy beam. "Fire at me again. I know exactly where you're going to shoot." The Union ship, programmed for rigid efficiency, followed its algorithms perfectly, firing where Alex should have been. But Alex was already somewhere else, pumping energy drain missiles into the cruiser's engine section. "This is Red Leader," he announced triumphantly over the comms. "I figure out their pattern. They can't hit what they can't predict." Other human pilots rapidly began copying Alex's tactics. They stopped trying to fly like the Union expected and started flying like humans, randomly, chaotically, unpredictably. The Union's targeting computers simply couldn't keep up. But the real shock came when a Union attempted to land ground troops on Earth itself. They expected to encounter an organized military, fighting in formations and adhering to predictable tactics. Instead, they found Carl Bulldog, Jensen, and his resistance fighters. Carl had been a construction worker before the war began. Now, he led a disparate group of ordinary citizens with one simple, burning objective: make the aliens regret ever setting foot on Earth. The Union soldiers, mostly the hulking Drachner, were accustomed to fighting other professional armies. They were utterly unprepared for humans who used construction equipment as improvised weapons, who vanished into sewers and subway tunnels, and who treated every building like a fortified bastion. "They don't understand us at all," Carl told his team as they prepared to ambush an alien patrol. "They think we'll fight fair and surrender when we start losing. They don't know that humans don't surrender. We just get meaner." The ambush was perfectly executed. Carl's team used explosives hidden in construction sites to bring down entire buildings on top of the alien soldiers. When the aliens called for air support, the humans melted away into tunnels, only to emerge elsewhere to attack a different target. The Union forces controlled the major cities and main thoroughfares, but everywhere else belonged to the humans. Every supply convoy was attacked. Every communication relay was sabotaged. Every alien soldier who ventured out alone simply vanished. Perhaps the most pivotal discovery came from Engineer Anya Rostova, who had been tirelessly working to crack the Union's communication codes. After days of relentless effort, she finally breached their advanced encryption. "General Volkov, you need to see this right away," she said, her voice crackling with barely contained excitement over a secure line. "I've been monitoring Union communications, and I've found something incredible." "What is it?" the general demanded. "Messages between the Union fleet and other parts of their empire," Anya replied. "And sir, they're not just fighting us. There are resistance movements on dozens of worlds. Species that have been under Union control for centuries are starting to rebel." "Why now?" the general pressed. "Because we're proving that the Union can be beaten," Anya said, her voice rising in triumph. "Every Union ship we destroy, every battle we win, it's being reported across the galaxy. Other species are seeing that the Union isn't invincible." General Volkov immediately grasped the profound implications. Earth wasn't just fighting for its own freedom anymore. They were fighting to ignite and inspire every enslaved species in the galaxy. "Anya, can you contact any of these other resistance movements?" he asked, his mind already racing. "I believe so, sir. And there's something else. I found communications about something called Kepler Prime. It's a Union prison world, where they keep the leaders of species that refuse to cooperate. If we could free that world, we'd gain allies with military experience and a serious grudge against the Union." The general finished, a strategic light gleaming in his eyes. The war was far from over, but humanity was learning a crucial lesson. They weren't alone in this fight. Across the galaxy, other species were watching Earth's defiant resistance and finding their own courage. The Union had made a grave miscalculation. They believed that crushing one small planet would be easy. Instead, they had inadvertently ignited a fire that was now spreading across their entire empire. And fires, once kindled, are incredibly difficult to extinguish. 6 months had passed since the war began. The Galactic Union had anticipated crushing Earth in a matter of days. Instead, they found themselves entangled in the longest and most costly conflict they had waged in a millennium. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the new Earth starship, the ESS Defiance, observing his fleet preparing for the most critical battle in human history. The Defiance was a marvel of human ingenuity, built from a seamless integration of human engineering and captured Union technology. It wasn't as massive as the Union ships, but it was faster, smarter, and crewed by individuals who had literally nothing left to lose. "All ships report ready." Commander Scott Davis's voice crackled over the comms. He now commanded a formidable fleet of 30 human ships, most of them constructed in the frantic months as Earth's factories operated around the clock. Their target was Kepler Prime, the Union's infamous prison world where the most dangerous enemies of the Empire were held. According to Anya Rostova's intelligence, over 100 leaders from various rebel species were incarcerated there. If Earth could liberate them, they would gain experienced allies for the first time. "Remember the plan?" Jake announced to his fleet, his voice calm and resolute. "Fast and hard. Get in, rescue the prisoners, and get out before the Union can bring in overwhelming reinforcements." Admiral Rachel Stone commanded the overall operation from her flagship, the ESS Freedom. She had been swiftly promoted from colonel after repeatedly proving her exceptional leadership and tactical brilliance in the early, desperate battles of the war. Her crucial role was to coordinate not only the human ships, but also the secret allies Anya had meticulously contacted. "This is Ghost Squadron," a voice came over a hidden, encrypted radio channel. "We are in position." Ghost Squadron was not human. They were elite pilots from 3 different species whose worlds had been decimated by the Union. They had been in hiding in the uncharted outer reaches of space ever since, patiently waiting for a chance to strike back. "Confirmed, Ghost Squadron," Rachel replied, her voice firm. "Begin your attack run." The battle for Kepler Prime commenced with orchestrated confusion. The Union defenders first detected Ghost Squadron and, true to their predictable programming, assumed they were dealing with another isolated, small rebel group. They immediately shifted their ships to intercept, following their standard, rigid battle plans. That's when the human fleet, emerging from the opposite direction, struck. "Surprise," Jake muttered, a grim satisfaction in his voice, as the Defiance unleashed a devastating volley on the Union command ship. "Bet you weren't expecting that." The Union forces were caught utterly off guard. Their ships were designed to engage a single enemy at a time, using overwhelming force to crush resistance swiftly. They had never encountered a coordinated, multi-species assault executed with such precise timing and unpredictable tactics. "Union command ship is damaged," reported Alex Reed, who now flew a fighter squadron built around captured Xylosian engines. "Their communications are down." Without their central command ship, the Union fleet couldn't coordinate their response. Each vessel fought on its own, following basic, pre-programmed responses that the humans had learned to exploit months ago. "Focus fire on the prison transport," Rachel ordered, her voice cutting through the comms. "That's our primary target." The prison transport was a massive vessel, designed to hold thousands of prisoners in perfect, unbreachable security. Its limited weapons were intended solely to suppress escape attempts, not to engage in a full-scale battle. Within minutes, human boarding teams, led by Bulldog Jensen, were cutting their way inside. Carl had transitioned from a construction worker to a relentless resistance leader, and now, a daring space marine, acquiring new skills as the war demanded. His team moved swiftly through the prison ship's labyrinthine corridors, methodically freeing alien prisoners who hadn't seen natural light in decades. "This way," called out one of the freed prisoners, a towering alien with deep blue skin and 4 powerful arms. "The political prisoners are held in the maximum security section." "How do you know?" Carl asked, his weapon at the ready. "Because I was one of them until yesterday," the alien replied, his voice resonating with a deep, powerful timbre. "My name is Commander Xylos of the Free Phalon Republic. We've been waiting for someone like you for a very long time." The maximum security section of Kepler Prime held the true prize they were seeking. Leaders from dozens of diverse species, all imprisoned for the singular crime of refusing to accept Union protection. Many possessed invaluable military experience and deep knowledge of Union weaknesses. "Humans," said an alien that resembled a walking tree, with numerous glistening eyes, identified as a Sylvani. "We heard about your war through the prison communication network. You have given hope to species that have forgotten what hope felt like. Can you fight?" Bulldog Jensen asked directly, his gaze firm. "We've been planning rebellion for years," replied another freed prisoner, a Drachner warrior whose scales were scarred from countless battles. "We just needed someone to prove it was possible." The rescue operation was a resounding success. Over 200 political prisoners were freed, including highly experienced military commanders, brilliant scientists, and innovative engineers from species across the galaxy. But more importantly, the battle sent a message that propagated faster than Union ships could travel. Earth had not merely survived the Union's attack. They had struck back and won a significant victory. Dr. Lena Petrova meticulously monitored Union communications from Earth as news of the Kepler Prime rescue rippled across the galaxy. "General Volkov," she reported, her voice almost breathless with excitement. "We're picking up rebellion signals from over 50 different worlds. The Union is losing control of their empire." "What are they doing about it?" the general asked, his expression grimly satisfied. "They're panicking," Lena replied. "They're pulling ships from all over the galaxy to reinforce their core worlds. For the first time in 1,000 years, they're on the defensive." The war's decisive turning point came when Ambassador Zaktar himself arrived at the Solaria system with the largest Union fleet ever assembled. He was determined to crush the human rebellion once and for all, and to restore the Union's shattered reputation for invincibility. "People of Earth," his voice, no longer serene but imbued with chilling authority, echoed across all communication channels. "You have caused enough chaos. Surrender now, and we will be merciful. Continue to resist, and we will destroy every human in the galaxy." President Kate Sullivan's response was broadcast not just to Earth, but to every rebel world across the galaxy. Ambassador Zaktar, she said, standing before the cameras with the leaders of 6 different alien species, a Drachner, an Athelian, a Sylvani, a Phaelon, a Kralian, and a Xandarian, standing resolutely behind her. You offered us protection, and we asked, from what? Now, we know the answer. You wanted to protect us from freedom. You wanted to protect us from making our own choices. You wanted to protect us from being truly alive. She paused, looking directly into the camera, her eyes blazing with conviction. We reject your protection today, tomorrow, and forever. And we are not alone. The galaxy is full of species who are tired of your version of peace. Your empire is built on fear and lies, and both are crumbling. The final, climactic battle took place in Earth's own Solarius system. The Union brought 500 ships, more firepower than had ever been assembled in one place. Earth's defenders numbered only 80 ships, but they were supported by newly arrived rebel fleets from a dozen different species, united under the banner of the Free Species Alliance. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the center of a human line as the Xylosian ships advanced. He thought back to the simple question that had ignited this war. Protection from what? All ships, he announced over the comms, his voice ringing with power. This is our moment, not just for Earth, but for every species that ever dreamed of being free. Show them what happens when you try to cage the human spirit. The battle was fierce and terrible. Union ships fell like leaves in a storm, but so too did many brave human and allied vessels. The crucial difference was that when a Union ship was destroyed, its crew often surrendered. When a human or allied ship was crippled, its crew kept fighting, often sacrificing themselves to take down another enemy, until the very end. Union flagship is breaking formation, reported Alex Reed, his voice raw but triumphant. They're running away. Ambassador Zaktar's revelation. Class ship was indeed retreating, along with most of the surviving Union fleet. For the first time in their millennia-long history, they had been decisively defeated by species they considered primitive. The war wasn't over, but the decisive victory had been won. Across the galaxy, Union-controlled worlds declared independence. Species that had been slaves for centuries remembered what it meant to be truly free. The Galactic Union, built on fear and control, collapsed as swiftly as it had once expanded. A year later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of humanity's first true deep space starship, the FSA Independence. Around him, the Free Species Alliance was growing stronger every day. Former Union worlds were eagerly sharing technology and forming new partnerships based on mutual respect rather than coercive protection. Captain, his communications officer stated, we're receiving a transmission from the Vegan Republic. They wish to discuss a trade agreement. Tell them we're interested, Jake replied, a genuine smile gracing his lips. But make sure they understand that we're partners, not protectors. Through the view screen, he could see ships from dozens of different species, their diverse forms cutting through the void, working together to build a better galaxy. The Union's greatest mistake had been trying to protect humanity from the inherent dangers of freedom. What they never truly understood was that freedom wasn't something humans needed protection from. Freedom was what humans were willing to die to protect. The galaxy remained a dangerous place, full of real threats and challenges, but it was also brimming with boundless possibilities, exhilarating adventure, and the chance to forge something truly magnificent. The Free Species Alliance faced an uncertain future, but it was their future to build, and that made all the difference.